Hello, college football fans. Welcome to yet another edition of Urban's Take, featuring three-time national championship winning coach Urban Meyer with yours truly, Tim May. Urban, let's just get right into it, man. We're halfway through this college football season now. We saw a crazy weekend of college football. Obviously, you guys were up at Michigan in the big house for the Michigan Penn State game. That was a Freudian there. And you saw Michigan take care of business, but you're going to be back in more familiar confines, right? Or maybe friendlier confines this week. You're going to be the big noon kickoff is going to be at Ohio Stadium, and how fun will that to be sort of home?
Yeah, I started challenging the Fox executives, saying what we became the Wolverine network there for quite a while, and I got to see that team 4 weeks in a row, and they're really good, Tim. They that score was not indicative of what actually happened. It was worse than that.
Yeah.
It was a beating from the beginning of the game until the end. Penn State somehow jumped ahead 14-13 in that second quarter on 2 plays. But
Yeah.
other than that, the Wolverines were down in the red zone 3 times right out of the gate. If they score touchdowns there, that's one of those 60, maybe 65 points. But the offensive and defensive line completely dominated the game. That's a well-coached team, really good players. They got 2 good running backs. The offensive line, their center is really good. J.J. McCarthy still has not been asked to go win a game yet. They didn't throw the ball downfield, I want to say, 1 time on Saturday. So that's the only – he's got it all. He's got a great arm. He's very athletic. He looks like he has command. But at some point, we know what's coming down the road, the Buckeyes versus the Wolverines. And history of that game is going to be the quarterback's going to have to go win that game. And so – that remains to be seen if he can go do that. He's very talented, but Tim, that was a beating. That was a bad one. That was a complete domination.
Yeah, it was crazy. Hey, I wanted to ask you this, man. You were a longtime college football coach. You had some really high highs, and you had a few lows. Let's put it bluntly. But the bottom line is, when you have high highs like some of these teams experienced last week, like Tennessee, like TCU with that great comeback win over Oklahoma State, Utah, your friend Cal Whittingham out there, that team never quit and finally and beats USC, man. That was just a hell of a game that maybe a lot of people didn't even see because they were so wrung out by what they had seen earlier in the day. But how do teams handle those kind of moments, these great moments of euphoria? How do you come back down and get ready for a college football game the next week, let's say? I mean, obviously, Tennessee's got UT Martin this week, not exactly a huge challenge, but what do you remember about your teams when y'all would have these midseason big wins? What was paramount on your mind that week of handling that?
Well, you coach long enough, you get scarred. You win, especially places like Ohio State or, say, Florida. You win a game, and they're ready to print, national championship tickets. And, I remember we beat Penn State here, and their fans rushed the field, and then we lost the next week. And you worry about that. So much of it is who you play the following week. We went on the road to Iowa against a good Iowa team, and obviously didn't play well. So I just, a little bit like I was with everything, I was just fearful that our team would not be ready. And, enjoy it. But my mind, once that we sing the fight song in that locker room, my mind's on the next one. And that, sometimes you don't get to enjoy those wins as much because I'm always worried about the next one. But it's real. Those players go out and celebrate. They are told, through the media and through family, through friends that, we got this, we got this, we got this. When reality is, you better get back to work Tuesday and Wednesday real fast, or you're going to get punched straight in the face. So that was the way I handled it. I've had other friends that are not our colleagues that are not quite as uptight and fearful of what's next, but I was one of those guys that I was always on to the next quickly.
I wanted to ask you, the flip side of that is some teams took some really tough losses last week. When you've got a team like that was flying pretty high, you thought, but like Alabama, for example. Alabama gets beat on the last play, but it's all their fault. They put themselves in that position. But you as a coach, everything's about getting to the college football playoff now for a lot of these programs, like especially like in Alabama and Ohio State, right on down the line. Oklahoma State was hoping this was the year after coming really close last year. How do you handle a team after it loses a game like that, where sort of, it feels like its dreams might be slightly dashed. Now with Alabama, as Nick Saban said, they can still get to where they want to go. And that's a true statement if they went out and stuff. So, do you handle those kind of things differently from one year to the next, from one game to the next, on how tough you are on a team after a loss like that? Or just what's your take on that?
Well, Lou Holtz used always to say that one of the cardinal mistakes or critical mistakes that coaches made, and we've all made them, is after a loss, you're overcritical. You overcoach them. They're already beat up. Right now they're getting beat up on campus. They're getting beat up in the media. It's over. You're not going to win a national championship. The problem with Alabama's and Ohio State's are that's a national championship or bust. I remember standing up in front of the media one time when I was at Florida, and then the reporter said, "How does it feel that anything less than undefeated in the national championship, you and your team are failures?" And the reality is, I looked at the person and said, "What are you talking about?" But that's real. And forget the old man coach. Think about those young players that every one of them has dreams and ambition to play in the NFL. You have people in their ear about that. Then all of a sudden someone takes a national championship from you. Alabama's on guard right now. Billy Donovan, the great basketball coach at Florida one time told me, he said, "Man, this March Madness it's tough because you can't lose a game." I said, "Billy, we live 365 days of March Madness. You can't stumble."
Yeah.
So no, the time, as I go back, Lou Holtz right now, you got to rally him. I would do things like I would put the college football playoff on a sheet. I would show them exactly where we stand. I called it the State of the Union. We would have a State of the Union meeting, especially if we had a loss, so you reinvigorate and say, "Hey, listen, we control. We win this Saturday, we win the next Saturday. We'll be exactly where we need to be." The problem is if you get another one.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Ryan Day, you probably saw this this week. Ryan Day, when we were talking to him about now they're about to face Iowa. Iowa I'm not even sure how to describe Iowa to somebody. Great defense, worst offense in major college football right now. 131st. You can't get lower than that. 238.7 yards per game, almost like they're not even trying. But the flip side of it is, you guys came off that big win over Penn State in 2017, great come from behind win, and go to Iowa. And then Iowa put a knot on your head, 55-24. And Ryan Day, he was your first year quarterbacks coach that year, I think it was. Yeah. But he said that's a scar still on him. You don't forget those kind of moments, do you? And here they are, they're hosting Iowa this week. But just what do you not necessarily remember about that? Because we touched on that a little bit, but those things do linger, don't they?
Oh, unfortunately for some of us, they linger forever.
Yeah.
We got to move on, and it's different. It's at home. It's a noon game. It's not you're walking into an inferno like we did at Iowa. They're not very good. Their offense, I'm not sure I've seen. The defense is really good, but
yeah.
The difference with their defense though is their secondary just doesn't have the speed. That's a really well coached Iowa team. They're tough as nails. They're going to challenge the run game. They're not, as I said in Big Noon one time, they're not overly chaos. They're more very sound in what they do. But their secondary is very limited athletically, and I look at Ohio State's what they've recruited and developed the wide receiver, which by the way I'm going to do a really good story on Heartline and these receivers. It's generational what Ohio State fans have got to witness the last few years at wide receivers. So I don't see a big challenge for the Buckeyes this weekend. I'm picking Ohio State as the number one team in the country because they don't have a weakness. Their only weakness team is their schedule.
Yeah.
That's their only weakness. And the schedule, if you looked at the preseason, you had Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan State. Those are all top 20 programs.
Yeah.
Now this year they happen to be not top 20. They're not very good. That's not Ohio State's issue. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're really well coached on offense, defense, great football players. There's not a weakness on this team.
And dude, they can get Jackson Smith and Jigba back, maybe the top receiver in the country. We'll see if he's back this week. Mayan Williams missed 2 weeks ago after coming off 189-yard rushing day, had to skip out that game at Michigan State. This team could be better than it was the last time you saw them, right?
Yeah, and you see the schedule coming up, and it's like, man, the Ryan's challenge is going to be how do you keep them on edge? How do you keep them, razor sharp? And I think it's a lot of it's going to be in practice, good on good.
Yeah.
I always told people Taylor Decker became Taylor Decker because he had to block Joey Bosa every day in practice.
Yeah.
And I always tried to set that up as often as possible. Good on good. How did Michael Thomas become Michael Thomas? He went against Eli Apple, Marshawn Lattimore every day in practice. A lot of times you play teams that just didn't have the same quality talent you had. Now you got to keep them healthy, but you got to keep them sharp because what's coming. You got some at the end of the season. You got a really good team, and then think about the Big Ten championship. It might be Illinois. And I think Illinois has done a great job, but you just look at the recruiting and the talent. This is a real intriguing situation for Ohio State.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, it was like I'm looking at Illinois, and I was on a radio show the other day, and I said, right now the thing with Illinois is they're playing their game. They're playing that Brett Bielema game about as well as you can play it, and they're still maybe talent-wise a little bit behind. But if you go in there and decide you're going to play them that way, well, shame on you, right?
Yeah, you get him in space, but he's that was a great hire.
Oh yeah,
Illinois. I know he stumbled at Arkansas, but you think when in 2012 when our staff first came to the Big Ten, they were the number one team in the conference.
Yeah,
they beat the heck out of Nebraska. Really good players every year, but they're a shell of themselves right now. Wisconsin. Just watch them, but they're the shell themselves. But Brett Bielema was, you knew at some point he would develop that team into a winner.
Yeah. He's got a, as I say, he's got a plan and he sticks to it. Hey, this week, couple of intriguing games to me. You got number 14 Syracuse at number 5 Clemson. Clemson, I don't know where to put Clemson right now, man. I want to be impressed by them. I don't think this defense is the same defense you guys faced a few years ago when you were at Ohio State. But they're figure out ways to win games, and and that's a way of doing it too, right? But who are we going to find out more about this week? You think Clemson or Syracuse? I mean, here's Syracuse. I mean, sort of an upstart, whatever you want to call it, a surprise. I mean, well, what do you think we're going to find out this weekend about those two teams?
Well, I think what happens, you find out about a team like Penn State when you go finally get against a really good team. There's a lot of teams that are supposed to be really good teams and they're not.
Yeah.
But Penn State, I kind of jumped on that bandwagon when they went down to Auburn, and I even said, I thought I picked the Wolverines to win, but I thought it'd be really close because, I thought that Singleton and they had some speed, but they were completely wiped out. So I don't know enough about Syracuse. I'm not all over them like I am the Big Ten schools and some other schools, but I think, once again, the decision will be made Saturday afternoon about what Syracuse really is.
Yeah.
And I think Clemson is going to handle that very easily.
Hey, and the other game I've got my eye on, I don't know if you do, but number 9 UCLA at number 10 Oregon. The last thing you remember about Oregon, anybody, that's college football is like this, man. Boy, when a team goes in and has a close game, you kind of remember that. But when a team gets bushwhacked like Oregon did in that opener at Georgia, well, it was in Atlanta. As the old saying goes, it's like playing Notre Dame in Rome. But when they get bushwhacked like that, you immediately write them off, right? And that's not the case. I mean, they're in the thick of it there in the Pac-12. But here you got UCLA sitting there. The Chip Kelly program has really come to fruition this year. That's an intriguing game. You agree?
Oh, I think I have UCLA potentially a playoff team because this morning I actually got up and I just try to pick days and today was my, whatever team. And I went after UCLA and I watched 2 hours this morning of UCLA. They're a physical offensive line. They're the most balanced team. Our attempt was always to be 250.
Yeah.
Run pass. That's what they're the most balanced offense in the country. They have Zach Charbonnet and they have a great quarterback that's been there for 25 years.
Yeah, you guys tried to recruit him, remember? I mean, after Tate Martell. Go ahead now.
Yeah, but they're very. Chip Kelly is one of the best. I've always admired him. He's a very good friend. They have the most creative run game, most balanced offense in college football with a physical offensive line. I think UCLA wins this game. It's going to be, that's one of Autzen Stadium in Oregon's one of those tough places to go play. They normally don't lose up there. I think this will be a great game. Oregon, very commendable what they did after getting the doors blown off, like you said early in the year. But this UCLA team is something. and they have USC at home, but it's the Rose Bowl. But I'm picking UCLA. After watching what I watched this morning, UCLA is for real. That's the one thing the Pac-12 has not been is physical.
Yeah.
We played USC in the Cotton Bowl. We played Washington in the Rose Bowl. Coach Day went out and played Utah in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
They kind of took the ball at will. They're just not physical. Utah's fairly physical, but this team's a physical team. UCLA.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's get right to it, man. We're at the end of this one, but it always ends with a checkmate moment, as you wanted to do at the beginning of this. And I thought there were a couple over the weekend. You can pick out which one you want to take, but Alabama misses that 50-yard field goal attempt that possibly could have won the game with 15 seconds left. The game's tied 42 all, whatever it was. 49 all. And Tennessee's at home. Instead of just sitting there and moving to overtime, Josh Heupel at Tennessee, man, you talk about doing a job. But Josh Heupel, they throw the ball down the field and then end up kicking the winning field goal from 40 yards with, 2 seconds left. Is that crazy? I mean, what was your take when you saw them coming out throwing the ball after that missed field goal? Did you think what's gotten into this guy, or you were thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to win it right now?
Well, it's all the quarterback. If you trust that quarterback, you take a shot right there. And also, they were having at will against the Alabama secondary. You saw that safety, and I heard Nick Saban's comments, but the safety for some reason was playing real deep behind and gave them easy access throws. So that was a decision that I would have made as well. If you have a quarterback you trust, if you have a young quarterback, then you get to overtime and keep playing. But that guy's a Heisman candidate, Hooker now. And I mean, what a player! His name is all over the country now, and it should be. But that was a checkmate moment. That was one of those moments you practice and you never sometimes get until that one moment you get it. And he called the right play, but more importantly, the players executed. The other checkmate moment now is the Utah one.
Yeah,
that was that's my friend Kyle Winningham. That was perfect. That was the environment. You're just moving the ball up and down the field on USC. USC is very talented. What's going through his mind in that moment is USC is probably a little bit more talented. They're going to have a hard time stopping them. Let's end the game right here. Let's end it. I have a quarterback that's kind of finding ways to score touchdowns, at Cam Rising, and it's at home. Let's go try to score and win, because if this continues to go, at some point USC would probably win that game. So that was a beautiful moment. I watched it live as I'm going, and I was some friends. I said, Kyle's going to go for 2 here, because just the environment, the setup was perfect. You had USC on your heels, and he knew in his mind that that game went to 2 or 3 overtimes. USC probably wins it.
What does that do for his football team? Or before we leave, what does that do for his football team, though? Because obviously they had a very similar moment in the season opener, or whatever. I think it was the season opener, the second game of the year at Florida. You're on the road and didn't get it done. What does that do for your football team in the middle of a season to have a moment like that?
Well, I know Kyle, and the same thing that we used to tell the team as part of our preseason preparation and explaining the culture that if challenged, we were going to go for it. We're going to be aggressive. You look back at the 2016, we went for it on 4th down and got that first down. There's other times we went for it on 4th downs and took shots. And if we don't get it, defense, get us the ball back. Don't be surprised. Don't complain. We're in this. And they went down to Florida and they were aggressive and tried to win the game. And I'm sure he went out, and the players support their coach, especially because he explained that to them. That was not at risk. That was part of the game. And, I'm sure that team would have been disappointed if he didn't went after it. Went after the 2-pointer.
It's pretty funny. Real quick before we go too. It's kind of cool to watch a team, and I know you do this with Ohio State all the time, but that was Utah. Your 2 years at Utah, really. I mean, Bowling Green got you on the map. Utah made you a big deal on that map, especially with that great team in 2004. But it's cool to watch a guy still in your shoes, right? That guy followed you, and for them to have that kind of success, it feels pretty good inside, doesn't it?
Well, one of the great things is that stadium averaged, 10, 12, 15,000 people per game. And we started the student section. It's called the Must. We let the students actually name it. And I sat there and watched it, and it's, many analysts call it one of the most difficult stadiums in the country to play in. You look back, the first sellout at Rice-Eccles Stadium was Alex Smith against Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Both young players, and to see it now, and Kyle, everyone knows my respect and admiration for him. One of the best coaches in America, and great win for Salt Lake City and the University of Utah. Great win.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Urban's Take for this week. We'll be back next week after Urban has a little bit of home cooking, and then
Finally.
you guys are, And you guys are going
Finally.
to Penn State the week after that, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah,
the
we
big
got the Buckeyes back to back, and that's going to be the advantage Ohio State not to play that darn whiteout.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Hey, we'll talk about that next week. But hey, until then, for Urban Meyer, this is Tim May. We'll see you then.